Hello and welcome to episode 14 of the Long Shot Podcast, brought to you by 342 Productions. I'm your host, Duncan Robinson, once again here with Davis Patrick Reed. Davis, how we doing?
What's up? I get my middle name today, which is good. There it is. How we doing?
Yeah, we're going full government for the people, but I'm doing well. Currently in Denver, Colorado. Played here last night and getting ready to head to Minnesota. So enjoying the altitude up here, I guess you could say.
I wanted to ask you about that, actually, playing at altitude. I remember playing in a tournament when I was in like 6th or 7th grade in Denver and thinking that the altitude was going to make a really big difference because my parents had told me it might. And so I think in my head in 6th grade or 7th grade, whatever it was, I thought I was more fatigued than usual. Might have just been a, psychological thing. But do you feel that at all?
I definitely think there's a psychological component. I mean, it's talked about so much, as soon as we land, you got the people on staff making a joke, cracking a joke here or there. Even when you step on the court, they have the 5,280, I think that number is correct, feet above sea level printed right in the paint there. The Nuggets do on their home court. Yeah, just like a subtle reminder that we're used to this and you're not. But I will say, there's definitely some truth to it as well. I notice it when you first try to catch your first shift. It's hard to get wind that first shift. I don't know what it is, but your lungs kind of get blown out. But then after you get that first shift under your belt, the first 2-3 minute spurt of a game, then you just kind of settle in and it just kind of pushes to the side and you don't think about it as much, I would say.
It is such a home court advantage. We've talked on this podcast about your home court advantage, which is opposing teams in Miami. But altitude, yeah, it's got to be a real thing. And I love the paint reminder. That feels like they're trying to spur the psychological effect.
Well, sure, yeah, they lean into it fully. But you're right. I think you could argue that there is a competitive advantage to the fact that they practice in it every day, they train in it, and they play in it 41 times a year. So they're absolutely used to it. And then obviously you get teams like us who, we play here just once a year, come in town, and there's definitely a different feeling. If you don't necessarily feel the altitude, you definitely feel like the dryness of the air. Obviously I'm used to Miami where it's very humid and hot. But that also is an adjustment as well.
Well, and it's not just a team at a team level, but at a personal level. Some guys do a lot more running than others. And I would say you fall very much in the category of doing a lot of running. Have you ever tracked, or do you know how much distance you're covering in a game?
I think that these statistics are at the disposal of everyone. I think they're public. NBAstats.com, whatever. Clearly you haven't done your research leading up to this.
Not at
this
all.
Episode. I want to say, don't quote me on this, but I think it's around 3 miles a game. And I know at least offensively, I'm up in the kind of upper echelon of the league in terms of how much I run, which I guess shouldn't be a surprise. I mean, that's kind of how I get my shots. That's how I get my looks, changing sides of the floor, making the defense work, all that sort of stuff. So yeah, I mean, I kind of pride myself on being in really good shape. So I'd like to think that, when we do play in a place like Denver, I'm maybe less impacted by the altitude because, you could maybe say I'm built for this. But I maybe I won't go that far, but I've trained for this. So I would feel the impact less than others. But yeah, it's part of playing in this league. You gotta go play in Denver.
First of all, don't come at my research. Secondly, so what do you do to train for this? Are you doing different conditioning stuff than the other guys? Or is this just on your own time? You're making it an emphasis in the off season?
Well, the Miami Heat in general do a really good job of making sure guys are in elite shape. It's something that we really talk about, and something that it really starts with Coach Riley at the top, that he has always prided himself on having teams that are going to be the best conditioned. So, weight and body fat is a priority in Miami for sure. And then also, we have a conditioning test. We're one of the few teams in the NBA that still do it. And it's challenging. It's certainly not easy, and everybody's got to pass it. I think there's been rumors floating around of like years when D Wade didn't have to run it or whatever. That's actually not true. That's been addressed internally when Brian Windhorst came out and said that about D Wade. Coach Spo quickly addressed that was not the case, and that every year those guys, regardless of who was on the team, everyone's running it and everyone's passing it. It's kind of like really in many ways a team bonding experience in the worst way, I might say.
Yeah, right.
That you just you got to endure it, you got to go through it. But it's a good feeling that once you do go through it, that you're prepared, and honestly far more prepared than a lot of players in the league. And that's not to take a shot at anybody, but particularly maybe older guys, they'll use the first 5-10 games of a season to kind of ease and work their way back to shape. Whereas we really take pride in training camp day one, everyone's in elite, tip top shape. That the conditioning test is basically your ticket to training camp. You have to pass it in order to attend training camp.
What's the conditioning test look like? Is it a bunch of different things, or is there like one part in particular that people dread the most?
I'm not going to get too lost in the weeds or
it's confidential.
Well, I just don't want to expose the secret sauce,
I get it. I get it. Eat culture, baby. I'm drinking the Kool-Aid.
I mean, it's relatively standard. It's not like you can really reinvent the wheel. But I will say it's really challenging. It's not just something that they have just to kind of check a box. Like it really determines, like if you run it, and you can do it and finish it, you're in really good shape, basically.
Wow, I didn't know that this was it seems like almost a touchy subject.
Yeah, I'm just not going to put it out on airwaves. There's as much as I love having a public long form pedestal, I guess, if you will, that I can
pedestal is the right word. You're on a pedestal.
Share my thoughts. You got to draw a line somewhere, so nights out at Tau are one thing, but when we start talking about Miami Heat and what makes it a special organization, you got to keep some stuff in house.
That's fair. I think pedestal is the right word. You and I are now on a pedestal above everyone else, just now that we have this podcast. But it actually takes me to something that I was thinking of earlier today, just how awesome it is that people listen to this every week. I'm in a men's league now in Kansas City, and that we don't need to get into that. I took a tough loss last night, actually.
Oh, dear.
But I ran into a kid that I played high school basketball with. I hadn't seen him in 10 years. And he came up to me, he's like, man, the podcast is so awesome. I've been listening to every episode. And it's just so great that I'm very grateful for the people that are listening to this podcast. I think it's awesome.
I want to take some time to shout out a specific demographic, and that is NBA ball boys. Whenever I go on the road, whenever I'm playing in a different city, I'm usually one of the first guys out for doing my warm-up. And sometimes I'll beat, our coaches out there, and I'm chopping it up with the ball boys. I try to be personable, ask them, whatever, engage a little bit. And almost every single one of them makes a comment about the podcast. So in terms of what demographic we're really covering,
yes,
NBA ball boys is up there. Like I can't go to an opposing arena without getting a podcast comment from either a team attendant or a ball boy. So I just want to say for all you team attendants and ball boys out there who listen, it is deeply appreciated. And your participation, because that's what it is. It's not you just tuning in. You're participating in this weekly endeavor. And it's greatly appreciated. So thank you for bringing that up, because it's something I've been meaning to address publicly.
Yeah, 100%. If we've got all the NBA ball boys and that's it, that's enough. You know what I mean? Like that's enough for me to sleep at night, lay my head to rest with a smile on my face. We need to brainstorm some kind of name for our listeners, because like you said, this is a collaborative thing. Yeah. I want to welcome into the family. It's like we'll come up with something. The long shotters, the launchers, something. We can come up with something.
That's a work in progress, but
I'm freestyling here.
We're also open to suggestions, as always. As you alluded to, this is certainly collaborative. So if you have anything, feel free to throw it out there.
Yeah. All right. We're all the way off the rails. I wanted to ask you about your road schedule, which we've sort of touched on. You, like you said, you're in Denver. You guys are now going to Minnesota, but it's been a crazy stretch. I think we did the math. I think it's like 9 games in 14 days or something. You guys, we're coming on the tail end of the season now. Playoffs are right around the corner. Are you guys, is the approach any different when you're packing so many games into amount of time? Things like rotations and I assume those get changed up a little bit, but also just the mentality when you're flying, because you guys just did your West Coast trip, when you guys are flying all around the country, playing games every other day or even back to backs.
Yeah, well, it's challenging because as you mentioned, obviously the stretch right now it's 9 and 14, but I know this little stretch we're on is 8 and 12, which is a lot of games, especially when you're being asked to play at a really high level every night. But perhaps what makes it most challenging is it's a really obviously pivotal time in the season, particularly when you look at how the Eastern Conference playoff picture is kind of starting to play out. You have 1 through 3 kind of solidified in Brooklyn, Philly, and Milwaukee. They've proven to be the most consistent three all year, at least in terms of playing at a high level. And then you just kind of have this kind of grouping, which ends up being really 4 through 11, which is everyone's just kind of in the mix. So for us, it's challenging because, like you said, we're playing pretty much every other night with back-to-backs mixed in, but also the stakes are really high, and that all of these games are, you never maybe want to call it a must win, but they're really important games. Just in terms of if you're able to string a couple in a row and solidify yourself and start to kind of separate yourself from the pack a little bit, that can be huge. So it's challenging for sure. We're obviously not the only team going through it. Everybody's going through it in some capacity. It's, I guess you could say, a luxury that those top 3 teams have earned, and that they're able to be a little bit more open with maybe resting guys. You see it with Philly, you see it with Brooklyn, guys kind of in and out of lineups, but we just don't really have that luxury. We got to come out every night and really do everything we can to try to win, just with how competitive that center of the Eastern Conference has been.
Yeah, and it's different this year than any year prior because of the play-in games too. So there's this added incentive, I'm sure, to get to 6 so you can avoid those play-in games. Because like you said, in the East, it's a mosh pit from 4 to 10. And there's a really big difference between being 4 to 6 to being in those play-in games. Is that something you guys are thinking about at all?
Truthfully, we don't talk about the playing games, just because we have aspirations of not having that be an issue. I think where we are right now, and it's crazy because you refresh the Eastern Conference standings every night. Teams are shuffling,
Right.
particularly in that 4 through 7 area. I think we were just 4, and then we were 6, and then 5, and I think now we're 6 or 7. It's just, if you lose, you're moving basically, and if you win, you have a chance to slide up. The playing game, I think recently has gotten some criticism from guys and owners, or GMs, or front office people, whatever it may be. But I think that it'll be interesting. Last year you look at a team like Memphis, who really in my opinion, earned the opportunity to be in the playoffs, and then turn around and end up in the bubble, and the Blazers get hot and end up once again finding their way into the playoffs. And it's tough for a team like Memphis, who they had shown all year that they were deserving of that 8 spot. But with that being said, I remember watching that Memphis Portland game and just eyes glued to the TV. Like, it's just high level entertainment, high level basketball. It feels like some mix of a playoff game mixed with college basketball's one and done kind of, or winning you're out or losing you're out kind of situation. And it is entertaining. So it's hard because it's certainly going to drive viewership, which obviously is the goal, but there's definitely it's definitely worthy to at least receive some level of criticism in that it's tough to be that 8 seed who's proven all year that they're worthy of being in the playoffs, and then having to go out and prove it on one night that they should be in. So it's a tricky situation. We'll see how it plays out, but I think the fans will at least like it. From the players' perspective, I can anticipate it being frustrating.
I was going to say, as a fan, I love it. I'm excited about it. We've talked about on this podcast how there's nothing better than those first few days of March Madness. And like you just said, this will have some of those components where it's win or go home right off the bat. And it adds an incentive for teams to keep trying to win if you're at the 11-10 mark, right? You'd have to think it devalues the approach of tanking if you're in that range, which I think is good too. Towards the end of the season, those games matter a little bit more for more teams. So as a fan, I love it, but I get your point. And I know some people have come out. I think Mark Cuban came out and said something. Luka's come out and said something about how, look, we play 72 games for that 8 seed. So I do understand that point. But as a fan, I love it. It gives you more playoff games, which is great. Hey, I wanted to give you your flowers because I forgot last week. This was on our list of topics to hit, and somehow we skipped it. I think maybe it was intentional by you. But you became the quickest in NBA history to make 453 pointers. That's a pretty remarkable achievement. I believe number 2 on the list was Luka. Number 3 is Trae Young. So there's clearly a trend with the direction that the NBA is going, but that's not to discredit, to hit more threes than those guys is a pretty big achievement. And then to set a record, we're never going to shy away from that.
Well, I feel like the little caveat that you threw in there of the trend was kind of an attempt to discredit, which I don't appreciate coming from you, but then I'll turn around and discredit it in that it's absolutely a trend. I mean, I think it's anytime that obviously you can set a record in this league, it's incredibly humbling. But it's also, I'm very much a beneficiary of the times of the way the game is now played, the emphasis on 3-point shooting. And also, I mean, like 90% of my shots are threes. So that alone pretty much tells you everything you need to know.
No,
I don't
but
know if
that's
it's
not
exactly 90, but it's close. I mean,
that's
it's in
not
the
the
80s.
whole story, though. I mean, yeah, you shoot a lot of threes. Most of your shots are threes, but you're also making a lot of threes. So it's, not everyone can just fire up 10 a game. We've talked about this a lot on the podcast. In fact, I think we've probably beaten the subject to death, but getting up 10 threes a game is really hard. So, and then let alone making 42% of them or whatever we're at. It's just, come on now.
My point being is that I am sure here in the next couple of years that record will come down.
We'll see.
And that there's going to be somebody else who takes what I do and takes it to just an entirely different level. If 85% of my shots are threes, 95% of their shots are going to be threes, or whatever it might be. I mean, I appreciate you acknowledging that, but I think it's important to at least give it in context. Tell the full story here. In that so much of those types of records, and it's not just the 3-point shooting, but like even you look at like offensive trends, like the Nets this year are historically high offense because of the pace. Like the pace of the NBA is just so much higher than it's ever been. So as a result, numbers are going to be skewed. I mean, one of my favorite things to do is to look at Kirk Goldsberry. And if you don't know who that is, you should check him out. Check out some of his articles. Check him out on Instagram. But he has a really interesting just collection of data dating back to early 2000s, 90s, but even it's crazy to look at the trends even since like 2012. He shows shooting trends of how, for example, attempts in a game, play the playoffs in 2010 versus the playoffs in 2020, and he gives these really comprehensive views of just how the game has really changed. And I think that he provides really good context to a lot of what's talked about today about how, a lot of times people talk about, the game's changed so much, it's all a 3-point shooting league, this and that. But his actual research and data and numbers and graphs and charts actually really put something visual to it, which I think is worth checking out. So shout out to Kurt Goldsberg. He also has a great book called Sprawl Ball, which I encourage everybody to check out.
I love it. I love the recommendation, but just a long-winded way for you to discredit yourself. Whatever. I'm still giving you flowers.
To credit somebody else. Kurt Goldsberg on doing really good work.
You're deflecting. All right, let's get to some housekeeping things. First is the Hugo Boss suit giveaway.
Yes.
Let me tell you, we have had so many submissions, so many good submissions. I'm talking from I need a suit so I can stun on my ex, all the way to like some really inspiring, heartwarming stuff.
I love it.
And, for the record, I love both ends of that spectrum. So we are still going through that. We are going to announce winners very shortly. But I just wanted to take a moment to thank everyone for their submissions.
I love that. We're excited. The outpour of support and excitement around the Hugo Boss giveaway has been encouraging. And as Davis mentioned, we're currently thumbing through all the submissions. We're going to do our due diligence.
Correct.
Make sure all the stories check out, do our background checks, all that type of stuff. So if you think you're going to try to pull a fast one on the Long Shot podcast, it's just not happening.
Yeah, think again, buddy.
Yeah, my guy Davis is just way too thorough over there. But that's a fun one for sure. Once again, shout out to Hugo Boss for that one. We also have. We've been talking about this for a little while now.
Yes, we have.
Excited to say it's finally coming to fruition. The NBA Top Shot giveaway is on the horizon. We've locked in a date. Thursday, April 22nd. Tentatively, we've locked in a time, looking at 7 p.m. But basically what we're going to do is we're going to go on YouTube Live. So if you don't follow us on YouTube or subscribe to us, I guess I should get my terminology right, on YouTube, you should do that because we're going to be going live. We're going to be opening some packs, and then we are going to turn around and be giving away those packs.
Wow.
Yeah, which is pretty exciting. Obviously, Top Shot is continuing to be all the craze and all the rave. So it's an opportunity to get you some free moments. I mean, it's pretty simple stuff. You just got to be a fan of the Long Shot podcast. You get a suit and some free moments.
Come on now. What else do you want from us? As you are reading that, I'm checking my place in line because there's a Top Shot drop going on right now. I'm not going to get a pack. There's 120,000 people ahead of me. It's heartbreaking. Point being, very hard to get packs, people. But guess what? We got some and we're giving them away.
Love it. Let's get to Reddit question of the day. Dave, what do you got for us?
Yeah, I got a quick one this week because I'm interested to hear your take on this one, Dunk. Pretty simple one. This comes from user 13579X, a fan of prime numbers, if you will. And they ask, what are the best recent basketball movies? So I have my opinion, but I want to hear you. Maybe let's go like last 20 years in the 2000s. Do you have your go-to basketball movies?
Why do you have to put a cap on it? Why does it have to be the last 20 years?
Because the question is, what are the best recent basketball movies? Recent's arbitrary. I'm just kind of making up. I'm going to go 2000s.
God, that kind of threw off my answer. I didn't see the recent. I was going to say White Men Can't Jump, but I think that's 90s.
Yeah, that is a classic though.
That's my favorite. I mean, I guess it's like Mike is for sure up there.
It's definitely
once
up
again,
there.
Space Jam is before the 2000s. Those would be my top two. He Got Game is also up there. That's before the 2000s.
You're all going.
What I'm kind of learning now from answering this question is that we have a shortage of high quality basketball movies in the last 20 years.
We kind of do. So I'll go. So there are two directions you can take this. One is just a movie that involves basketball. Semi-Pro is. I mean, that's an all-timer. We were actually just talking the other day about how many quotables are in that movie.
It's incredible.
I mean, that's a top 10 movie for me, just personally. I'm not saying like most perfectly made movie of all time, but just entertainment level is off the charts there. But if we're going to go more serious, we've got Coach Carter. We've got Glory Road, both good options. I think I would go Glory Road if I have to go like the drama direction. That's an all-timer.
I'm going to go, since you bring it up, I mean, Coach Carter and Semi-Pro are both great. I'm probably going to go Semi-Pro. I mean, it's just, as you mentioned, I feel like you could just watch that movie on rerun almost. Like you
100%.
could just like put it on loop. So many hilarious moments. And that was like vintage prime Will Ferrell. That was like anything Will Ferrell touches is gold. Will Ferrell,
Yes.
and then it kind of started to kind of go downhill maybe a little bit after that. I mean, even though Step Brothers, I think, was after that, and that was elite. But yeah, that was as good as it gets, Will Ferrell, in my opinion.
And what's so special about that movie is the throw it in the blender scene. I know I don't like it. All right, back in the blender. All right, clear out. That is kind of what you and Bam do on a nightly basis, which is special.
Calls it travel. I took 1.5 steps. What do you want from me?
What did I say?
Anyways, all right, that was a great that's a great mailbag. Let's push forward here. Long shot feature. We got Aminat Idris, I believe is the pronunciation there. A Nigerian woman who won the gold medal in Taekwondo at the country's national sports festival. Now catch this, Davis. She was 8 months pregnant while she won it.
8 months pregnant, wins the gold medal in a Taekwondo competition. This was non-contact, by the way.
I think that's an important anecdote
massive
to bring
disclaimer.
to the table. That there was no physical, just non-contact.
But nonetheless, that's not to discredit at all. Nonetheless, 8 months pregnant, wins the gold medal in the non-combative category. So it focuses more on like technique and form. Just goes out there, a couple weeks away from having a child and beats the rest of the competition. Just remarkable.
I know very little about Taekwondo, but I have to imagine, when you're evaluating something like that, I almost liken it to figure skating. Once again, I don't know a lot about figure skating either, but like I think that I got to imagine the judges are like so precise.
Yes.
Over hand movement, body movement, just the whole thing. And I just can only imagine it takes a lot of discipline, a lot of practice, a lot of unseen hours, if you will, just kind of beating and honing on her craft, all while carrying another human life, which is just beautiful.
I was going to say, you know very little about Taekwondo. I know very little about being pregnant, but I can assume that both of those things are remarkable. Winning gold in a Taekwondo competition, but being pregnant, obviously, it's just remarkable, incredible. So yeah, this was a good one.
Yeah, that's fun. And once again, shout out to Aminat Idris.